Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 2021 UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. This is the final session titled Closing Plenary, a Roadmap to South Asia. I'm Mishu Chana from Insight Pact, and I will be your technical facilitator today. Today, we have the Q&A function open and available for your use. If you have any questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A function. You are also able to upvote and comment on the Q&A questions. Please note that today's session is being recorded. If you have any questions about Zoom or require technical assistance, please feel free to privately message me for help using the chat box. I will now hand over to Surya Deva. Surya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mishu. My name is Surya Dev. I'm the current Vice Chair of the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights. And it's my great pleasure to moderate this closing plenary session of the second UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. All good things come to an end, and I hope this forum was a good thing. We'll wait for your feedback, but assuming that, I think this is the final session, but we are not going to finish here. And that is where we are going to bring everything together in terms of the different countries, what we have discussed during the session, and where should South Asia be going collectively, as well as different countries in South Asia. So with that in mind, this panel is going to invite one person from the 5 South Asian countries, on which we had a dedicated country session for the first time in this forum. And they will share a brief roadmap for each of those countries. And then I'm going to invite the 3 panelists from 3 co-organizers of this forum to provide their reflections on those mini roadmaps, as well as share their insights on that. So I'm going to introduce the speakers in when I invite them. And let me start with the different country rapporteurs. So I will start in alphabetical order with Bangladesh. And from Bangladesh, I would like to invite, first of all, Mr. Mohammad Ghulam Sarwar, who is an assistant professor at the University of Dhaka. So Mohammad, you have the floor, and if you can share with us the roadmap in your view for Bangladesh going forward. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Surya. Good evening from Dhaka. As the time constraint is there, so I'll be focused on the roadmap. As we have discussed over the last 3 days in this forum, particularly we have discussed in our session about the challenges. So I'll be brief on 2 minutes about the key challenges in Bangladesh. So like all the countries, pandemic is a challenges in Bangladesh. Pandemic has accelerated the already the already vulnerabilities what people are facing, particularly from the perspective of labor rights or worker rights in the context of Bangladesh. So workers, a large number of workers have been terminated from their jobs without having any kind of remedy. So this is the immediate outcome of the pandemic. So pandemic is a big challenge to integrate business and human rights discourse in Bangladesh. And another major issue is the lack of understanding on the discourse. Since there is no, extensive research policies or any kind of studies on business and human rights. So there is a widespread lack of understanding among the stakeholders and the common people in general. Another important challenge is the access to the labor courts. So, you see one of the fundamental elements of the UNGP is the remedy. So access to court is, very much important. But the context of Bangladesh is like the laborers, are facing tremendous challenges to face to the courts. In terms of, physical accessibility and as well as the economic accessibility to access to the courts. And another important dimension is the environmental consideration is missing into our policies, particularly development policies and the business practices. As you see, Bangladesh is, going to graduate from LDC to middle income country, but the environmental consideration probably is missing in the development endeavor. And another fundamental issue is the lack of civil society platforms to take this business and human rights discourse go on, including National Human Rights Commission, because National Human Rights Commission is the key stakeholder, to advocate for human rights. But over the last few years, we see that this commission has failed to uphold its due role, which has been given under the National Human Rights Commission Act. So, there are many factors why this commission is not functioning effectively. So we need to focus on this, functioning of the National Human Rights Commission, along with, the civil society platforms. Coming to the country roadmap, to be very focused. First of all, we need to develop a pandemic recovery plan that includes definitely human rights based as pandemic recovery plan. So the plan definitely or should includes the human rights consideration in its plan. And the second is the national action plan. As we all know that Pakistan and India is in the process of developing a national action plan, but Bangladesh has not started its process. So, definitely we should take initiative with the, endeavor from the government, civil society, NHRI and other, partners to formulate or to advocate for, NAP first of all, and to formulate then an action plan. Third issue is the legislative reform. We need to reform our labor laws to incorporate particularly the UNGP principles and to incorporate the international labor standards into our laws. So we need legislative reform. Fourth is the expansion of labor codes. So the labor codes are not, active in all the regions of the Bangladesh. So labor codes should be expanded. And at the same time, labor codes should be equipped with, proper staff and other infrastructural facilities so that people can get, or avail, labor justice. Another important thing is that the companies or the multinational corporation should come forward to develop a code of conduct for business practices, and that code of conduct should be, based on human rights principles. So, that process can be started, immediately, and after 2 or 3 years, we can see the action plan is formulated. So the immediate plan is the code of conduct for business practices, and the long-term plan is the NAP and other national framework. And we need to develop a strong protection mechanism, particularly to protect FDI and the and other trade investment. As you see that European Union already cautioned Bangladesh to improve its human rights record. Otherwise, they will not cooperate in terms of trade and investment with Bangladesh. So human rights record should be improved because as you see that reporting of human rights violations is in a very fragile state or is in a very developing state. So the reporting of human rights violations mechanism should be developed so that the violations of human rights are reported in a proper style and or have been adjudicated properly. And another plan for the or the action plan for the roadmap is the empowering stakeholders. So we need to develop a campaign platform to advocate for BHR discourse, and at the same time establish a platform to advocate, to empower, to mobilize, to foster this discourse. UN South Asia Forum can be definitely an effective or vibrant forum that we can collaborate and we can establish that campaign platform. And lastly, I would say the awareness campaign. Since the widespread lack of awareness in the context of Bangladesh is there regarding, business and human rights discourse. Including the education. Human rights education is also, is also not included into our curriculum. Not in the primary, not in the tertiary level. So human rights consideration or human rights based education should be included into the tertiary education curriculum. As a part of the awareness campaign, and a campaign platform can be launched to make people aware about business and human rights, particularly the corporations and industries, because those corporations and industries are basically contributing. Yeah, I'm finishing with it 20 seconds. So those business practices and business and corporations, I mean, should be made responsible so that, I mean, they come up with a plan to incorporate or to integrate BHR principles into their practices. And at the same time, I mean, they should realize that their practices based on human rights will promote sustainable business. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mohammed. Now I would like to invite the second rapporteur, and this is going to be Namit Agrawal, who is the Regional Public Policy Lead for World Benchmarking Alliance. And again, I will request all the speakers, if they can stick within the time, that would be appreciated. I was jokingly saying that this will be an evidence whether self-regulation works or not. So Namit, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya, Livio, and the forum organizers for this opportunity. And congratulations for a very successful South Asia forum. The World Benchmarking Alliance is a multi-stakeholder alliance launched at the fringe of the UN General Assembly in 2018. And our work and vision has always centered around the SDGs. We believe UNGPs is an important cornerstone for achieving the SDGs. And we bring together diverse actors to incentivize the private sector to meet the goals and to hold them accountable. I would like to share my roadmap for India's business and human rights journey in the next decade. This decade for India, as well as for the world, should be a decade of disclosure and a transparency revolution. The next 2 years should be treated as a testing phase for the NAP in India. To begin with, I expect that a thorough national baseline is published with the NAP. India's NAP should have clear actions, outcomes, timelines, and responsibilities. Awareness and training of national as well as state government, judiciary, and the police on human rights UNGPs should start immediately. SOPs should be developed for government departments, companies, industry associations, etc., for the adoption of the NAP. Every stakeholder should have the same understanding of the responsibilities and processes. Multi-stakeholder pilots should be developed to co-learn and co-design implementation mechanisms in different regions and sectors for scaling up. Government should take the lead by committing to a target of 100% UNGPs compliant procurement by 2022 across the board. To address the issue of state and fiscal capacity, additional state as well as non-state capacity for implementation in collaboration with private sector and civil society should be designed. The next phase, which is 5 to 10 years, should be focused on full-scale implementation, review, and scaling up. Implementation mechanisms should be institutionalized at state as well as district levels with adequate capacity, funding, and in collaboration with stakeholders from civil society and industry. Local level non-judicial remedy mechanism should be institutionalized as a compact between community, workers, civil society, industry, and local administration. An independent and nationwide accountability mechanism should be adopted to assess and monitor progress of all companies on NAP implementation in alignment with India's SDGs targets. Businesses must embrace benchmarks and learn from them. An inclusive and consultative review process of the NAP must be designed at an interval of about 2 years. Based on learning and evidence, the NAP and its implementation mechanisms must be corrected and redesigned if necessary. We need to also transform capital markets and financial institutions to support and promote UNGPs as well as the SDGs. Financial institutions must prioritize businesses with a proven track record on human rights to get access to capital at preferential terms or rates. About 100 MSME export clusters should be identified for a thorough implementation of the NAP and then scaled up in collaboration with trading blocs such as the EU. By 2030, I believe that India, as well as the world, would successfully deliver on the SDG targets with the private sector playing a very key role. Achieving economic growth and protecting human rights will no longer be considered a zero-sum game. Voices of dissent and those against injustice, discrimination, and human rights violation will be considered a duty towards the country. With that, I end my message and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Namit, for being very precise and keeping within the time. That was excellent. So now let me move on to the third country and the third rapporteur, and this is going to be Mr. Ravi Prakash Vyas, and he is an assistant professor at the Kathmandu School of Law. So Ravi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good evening from Kathmandu. Distinguished guests, Surya, Dante, Geeta, Livio, Harpreet, and the speakers from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Thank you so much for the kind opportunity to be part of this distinguished panel. While aiming for a better developed society through investment in business and development activities, we cannot overlook the effects that could emerge out of the business practices. In a simpler sense, we cannot overlook the human rights issues that could arise through business practices in Nepal. Taking the business sector in Nepal as a subject, we can observe that it is continuously growing. Nepal's constitution has directed the economic objective of the state to achieve sustainable economic development with the involvement and participation of the public, private, and cooperative sectors. Keeping this in mind, laws today can be seen as more receptive towards the contribution of business sectors to which they have to offer. There are laws in practice which promote competition and market promotion, along with laws that govern foreign direct investment that directly affect the business sector. While there are laws that have created feasibility and growth of investments in business sector, we can also see that the laws regulate these businesses, making sure that they ensure respect, protection, and promotion of human rights. The interest of stakeholders in Nepal towards business and human rights is slowly taking off with a more focused and nuanced approach toward the area, and which could possibly reap progressive changes in the days to come. In few years, it would definitely be a stepping stone if Nepal starts discussing about a national action plan on business and human rights, but still much remains to be done. And moving forward, the government and the relevant stakeholders should ensure the following. The first should be ratification of international conventions and agreements related to business enterprises and human rights should be done as a priority. Second should be streamlining of judicial and non-judicial mechanisms, such as supporting the national human rights institutions and also supporting the national non-governmental sector in a process to discuss what could be done in regards to business and human rights. Third would be establishing human rights due diligence mechanisms as per the second and third pillars of the UNGP for obligating the Nepalese companies legally. The fourth would be streamlining corporate social responsibility laws and identifying and reforming regulatory gaps in implementation. Fifth would be ensuring accountability and transparency in the taxation of business enterprises. And sixth would be ensuring transparency and inclusiveness for all stakeholders by the government. And further, it should also be ensured that there is coherence in policies, laws, institutional frameworks at federal, provincial, and local level. Now, to keeping in time, I would like to thank you for the kind opportunity and congratulations for a very successful forum. And I hope we continue to work towards business and human rights in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Much appreciated again for keeping within time. So the next on my list is Pakistan, and from where I would like to invite Ms. Minahil Khan. She's a research fellow at the Research Society of International Law. Minahil, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Surya. I feel fortunate to be a part of this multi-stakeholder dialogue and to be able to reflect on Pakistan's progress on BHR and its commitment towards protecting human rights and underscoring the responsibility of businesses, and also to see what the future holds, and especially the role of regional cooperation after hearing what the rapporteurs from India and Nepal and Bangladesh have said, considering so many of our problems are so similar. This year is particularly important for all those working on BHR as it marks 10 years to the implementation of the SDGs and 10 years since the UNGPs. The intersection of these two is a good opportunity for collaboration between the two documents. This is also the year that we have seen one of the worst economic and human rights crises globally. COVID-19 has really brought about an unprecedented crisis. It's exacerbated existing inequalities, but at the same time, it has also provided businesses and states with an opportunity to reinvent themselves and to embed embed respect for human rights into their business values, to be able to play an instrumental role in enhancing business resilience to such crises in the future, and also to help transform businesses into sustainable entities, as we have witnessed that businesses that were more sustainable were the ones that were more resilient to this crisis. Looking forward, I think it's important that states, and especially Pakistan, through law, policy, and collaboration, help businesses assess the impacts of COVID-19 on stakeholders. The crisis has deepened the need for stronger constitutional protection, especially regarding the right to health. In Pakistan's context, this is something that has been on the agenda for many years, but it has periodically been sidestepped. And through the momentum on BHR and in response to COVID-19, I think this is something that needs to take center stage as we go into the future. Furthermore, I think the crisis, as well as the UNGPs and the SDGs together, have really highlighted the need to review how we look at our workers and our labor. The most essential workers during this period were the ones that were underpaid, working 2 jobs at a time, 2 to 3, earning below minimum wage. And I think that respect for workers and labor is integral to the BHR agenda. And it's important, extremely crucial, that documents that come out of the state, policies, plans, are not seen as top-down regulatory frameworks, but are based on participatory models. And therefore, it's important, especially in Pakistan's context, to take these documents, to take the policy right down to a district tehsil level, to ensure that all the people who are engaged in all activities are brought together and their perspective is included in this. In relation to this, Pakistan has made considerable progress on the BHR front. At present, we have a draft national action plan that has been posted online for consultations and feedback. The decision to do this is crucial to ensure inclusivity as well as stakeholder involvement. This also transforms the way we look at policies and documents that are coming out of the state. It really looks at, we've started to create, we've made businesses partners in this, which I think is very important. If you look at the priority areas, the stakeholders and implementing departments and organizations include trade unions, civil society organizations, business owners, and government entities. These partnerships are extremely important to ensure that BHR is not seen as a top-down regulatory system, and that it's seen as a participatory, inclusive movement. Furthermore, and very importantly, the NAP in Pakistan the draft NAP in Pakistan takes into account Pakistan's decentralized system of governance. And so the action points are tailored to the needs of every province and have been taken from the provinces themselves. So this ground up approach is very important, especially in Pakistan's context, when we look at the legislative competence in relation to many of the priority areas. So it's good to see that that's been factored in. However, moving on to some of the challenges and what we need to do in the future, a common thread during the country in focus session and through these 3 days has been that in addition to law and policy, we need more infrastructural changes to be able to include people into the workforce. There has to be stringent and stronger enforcement mechanisms, and priority areas that have been included in the National Action Plan, which are about 9, need to have proper implementation plans, especially in relation to the cost associated with these actions. It has also been noted that we need better grievance redressal mechanisms, and I think this is a common thread throughout the region, that justice sector agents, company redressal mechanisms, they need to be made more aware of how to deal with human rights cases. Additionally, people in Pakistan are not aware of they do not have the level of awareness required on their human rights and what access to remedy they have. We also see a very large informal sector. So many of these people are not documented, and this is something which will hamper the implementation of the National Action Plan, and is also something which needs to be made a priority area as to how we can include many of these smaller businesses into the formal economy to ensure that they can then embed human rights values into their businesses. And moreover, I think moving forward, consultations and a coherent, robust monitoring mechanism are the next steps for Pakistan. There needs to be a focus on climate change, on grievance redressal mechanisms, and on ensuring practically that all stakeholders are included in the NAP implementation process. I believe that the state has followed the methodology proposed by the UN Working Group, and I have a lot of confidence in the future of BHR in Pakistan. But when we speak of the future, I think it's also very important to be aware of the partnerships that can be created at a regional level. Especially after hearing today's conversations, I think it's crucial that countries which have similar experiences in similar contexts share their best practices with each other, peer review documents, and engage in dialogue on how the BHR agenda can be pushed forward in the region. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and that's all from my end.
Thank you very much, Minahil. And let me now finally move to the last but not least. The fifth country that we focused this year is Sri Lanka. So I would like to invite Priyanka Hethiarachi, who is the country representative for Westminster Foundation for Democracy. So Priyanka, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya and colleagues. Thank you very much. Very happy to have been part of this session. I'm going to draw very much on the Sri Lanka focus session to identify some of the issues and opportunities and challenges. When I was thinking of how to approach this, I thought of three streams: a government stream, a state stream, a business stream, and a CSO stream to take us from 21 to 2030. Sometimes those streams will intersect. Sometimes those streams will run dry, and then there's an opportunity for some of those streams to step up. In the short term, now that we've started with national action plans for business and human rights in our region, I think there's a race to a top. We can encourage each of the states to try and move on this. If any of the states do not, there's an opportunity for other actors to take the opportunity. CSOs could attempt a draft or a shadow national action plan. Again, reference to the stream analogy. If it does not move in the government stream, an opportunity for CSOs to move on that stream. Another part, a really important part of this, to build on the work that's been done in the last 10 years in the Sri Lanka context, is human rights due diligence. That is such a central part of what needs to be unlocked now and continues to have to be unlocked for the next 10 years. That's largely driven by business. If businesses do not move on this sufficiently quickly or fast, or it's not scaled up, opportunity for CSOs to be capacitated to do this, to monitor the conduct of businesses as if CSOs were understanding how businesses would be and should be doing human rights due diligence. So the two priorities for the short term would be the National Action Plan and mainstreaming human rights due diligence. What's the medium-term prize here? I'd like to say it's addressing the gender gap. In part, that flows from national action plans. In part, it flows from human rights due diligence. In part, it flows from greater CSO engagement. And why the gender gap? Labor force participation in Sri Lanka is particularly low, as it is in South Asia. Underrepresentation in business leadership in Sri Lanka, as it is in South Asia. Economic costs of violence against women, as it is high in Sri Lanka, as it is in South Asia. We have had this costed for us. An organization, McKinsey, has identified the business economic opportunity of unlocking and addressing the gender gap. For India, $770 billion in annual terms. Pakistan, $30 billion. Sri Lanka, $20 billion. And that's by 2025. So not only is it a good thing to do, all of the steps that business and human rights anticipates, National Action Plan, human rights due diligence, CSO engagement contributes towards that. And that would be the prize for 2025, the medium term. Running along each of these streams are the community of business and human rights practitioners with their resources, their funding, and that's critical. These community of practitioners will include media, universities, peak bodies such as employers' federations, trade unions, and so on. Their contribution, their participation, their integration with three key stakeholders are critical. I should include multilateral organizations with that, of course. And the reason for emphasizing resources and funding is that we've talked about the challenges of scaling up awareness and supporting CSOs and others as they help drive this agenda from 2021 to 2030. In my last minute, I'll focus on the fact that Sri Lanka is a developing economy moving towards middle income status. It has ongoing issues around debt, legacy of conflict, huge lack of awareness, and the lack of policies and laws in place to fully address the outcomes we're looking for in 10 years' time, which is ultimately good practices in business and human rights, preferably normalized language, not only in English, in all of the languages that are spoken in our region. And to do that, I go back to the priority areas for the short term, National Action Plan, with its building up of baseline targets, human rights due diligence, driven through the private sector, CSO engagement and awareness, and that will all contribute towards better practices in 10 years. Thank you for the opportunity to make this intervention.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. And that concludes the first section of this closing plenary, in which we presented the reflections from 5 countries in South Asia individually, and some common themes are emerging. And probably now I will invite the 3 distinguished panelists. It's my great pleasure to invite, first of all, my colleague Dante Pesce, who is the current chair of the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights. And Dante has been leading the working groups project on the 10 years stock taking so far, and where should we go in next 10 years. So Dante, your reflections based on your experience elsewhere, your overall perspectives, and any comments, suggestions you have for the stakeholders in South Asia. You have the floor. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Surya. Thank you to all the rapporteurs, also UNDP, ILO, the Office of the High Commissioner's team, the organizers, donors also to this event, and all the many participants and organizations. Hello and greetings from Santiago, Chile, pretty much at the other side of the world. And it's relatively early here, so I'm not in your situation feeling very tired after a very intense week. So I just want to make some reflections and some suggestions looking forward. And congratulate you that you are creating a community of practice and practitioners, but also you are building a community of the willing in South Asia. And that is fundamental, that is foundational if we want to raise the ambition into greater and better implementation into the future. Some observations, what I have heard from you, capacity, awareness, still low, lack of incentives, lack of law enforcement, lack of access to remedies, all the dimension of SMEs and the informal economy. But I have also heard a lot the word possibility, opportunity, honest assessment of challenges with a very positive tone. A tone that implies that things are possible, that change can happen, that there is a realistic possibility to raise the ambition as we all and you in your own region look forward. I would like to bring the attention that at the global level, and what we're taking from the 10 years anniversary stock taking exercise, is that the political will remains patchy, but we are getting there. And there are some parts of the world where, in some countries, in all parts of the world, where the political will is starting to be untapped. The case of the draft National Action Plan of Pakistan is a good example of that, but you're not alone in that. It's happening in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, in Eastern Europe, and of course in Western Europe, where I will make a short reflection there. We're also raising the ambition. 10 years ago, when the guiding principles were presented, launched, endorsed by the Human Rights Council, we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. It could move into nothing, or it could move into a direction of building or raising the ambition where we are right now, and also move from mostly a soft law approach, voluntary approach, and we're transitioning, especially in Western Europe, as you're well aware, but also in Canada and some other places, Australia, and some other places of the world, into a smart mix, including mandatory measures. And as you know, and you have discussed in this forum, the European Union has agreed, their parliament, by huge number, only 8% of the members of the parliament voted against mandatory human rights due diligence and environmental due diligence to be implemented in Europe, but with a global reach. And that connects to global supply chain, that connects to business relationships, to investment criterias. And of course, that becomes a huge driver, especially for export-oriented countries and the ones that are capturing international investment, especially going from that part of the world. So that is, let's say, something that is evolving right now. But we also know out of the 10 years that effective implementation remains, let's say, is not there yet. So we have levels of implementation, even in the most mature countries, which is far from good. Is starting to get there. There's starting to be enough movement. There's starting to be critical mass, but there are gaps in implementation and gaps in the effectiveness of the implementation in all three pillars, and you have mentioned many of them already. So let me go into my, let's say, the final words. The ecosystem for the respect of human rights by business is not there yet, but we're building, and you're building, the foundations that will allow us to get there. And the regional races to the top that our working group with our partners, ILO, UNDP, and other regions of the world as well, are building is part of the solution, because it's where we can cluster together, is the place to learn from each other, is the stock-taking exercise on an annual basis where we can actually exercise accountability and some scrutiny to each other in terms of how much progress have we made or how much progress you have made. The regional races to the top, of course, are part of a global race to the top that we cluster every year in Geneva and is happening across the world. And I will say we need to cross-pollinize us and learn from each other among regions where we are in similar stages of development. So not always compare ourselves to Western Europe, that is clearly a few steps ahead of the global South, so to say, but between Latin America, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, where we are facing similar difficulties in terms of our political landscape, our rule of law landscape, our ecosystem overall. Collaboration is needed within the stakeholders, communities, and among the stakeholders. So the collaboration has to happen, and that's my observation, within civil society, within business, within governments. We have some experience in some other regions that is happening, but also among, and let's say cross-cutting stakeholders to be able to be part of this community of the willing. Of course, capacity building is needed, a level playing field of competencies, of understanding. That requires also funding, and we're trying to do that as much as possible with our colleagues and partners and allies to get that needed basic level of funding to really raise the ambition on capacity, knowledge, etc. The knowledge management element, how can we learn systematically from each other and not start over every time? And how can we capture the lessons in a systematic way remains a challenge. But this platform that you're putting together in South Asia provides, and potentially will provide, that play that role of supporting knowledge management. Data and evidence, of course, is missing for the most part, but we are getting there. We are improving. There are signals that we are getting more systematic about data collection, etc. Coherence is key, has been mentioned before, at the global level with the SDG agenda, with climate change, with integrity towards 2030, towards 2050. That's part of what we will have to build during the next years to come, very clearly. Political will, as I said, is getting there, is critical for both government and business. And raising, and the final three words, Surya, I know you're nervous, raising ambition is possible. Raising ambition is possible. It's something that we are seeing, we're witnessing in this presentation today, but across the world. Working in between forums is critical at national and regional level, to basically not wait for the next year and to reconvene, but actually the work in between is as critical as it is to cluster one time a year. And finally, we have ahead of us a decade full of possibilities, and it's in our hands actually to make those possibilities turn into reality on the ground where it really matters. So thanks again for inviting me to make this reflection. I was taking close notes, and I'm very, very happy to be able to engage with you on long distance this time, and hopefully next year, as former member of the working group, we'll be able to visit you in your region. Thank you again. The floor is back to you, Surya.
Thank you very much, Dante. And without any further ado, let me turn to the second panelist, and this is going to be Geeta Rolians. She is the head of the Multinational Enterprises Unit of ILO. Geeta, you have the floor. What reflections you would like to share based on your experiences, not only in this part of the world, but global experiences in this particular field? You have the floor, Geeta. Thank you. Can you please unmute yourself? I'm not able to hear you at least. I don't know if it is the microphone, because not yet. I think something is missing. Now it's fine. You are not, but we can't still hear you, unfortunately. Technical team, any suggestion for Geeta? It was tested.
If you try unplugging your headphones, will you be able to use your computer microphone?
So see, Geeta, if you can speak directly in the computer microphone. Or what we can do is we can go to Livio, and in the meantime, you can try to fix something. That could be the other option.
Sure, let's go with that.
So I will propose that the logistics teams could work with Geeta and try to figure out what is the best way to get input from her. And let me invite Livio in the meantime to save time. So Livio Srenderia, all of you know him perhaps already, so I don't need to introduce him. He leads the UNDP's work on business and human rights in Asia and globally as well now. So Livio, you have the floor. You are an outsider insider to this part of the world.
Indeed.
Reflections.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Surya. Can I start by congratulating the panelists? Really exceptional panelists, clear to the point, articulated, action-oriented. Let's make them our ambassadors in their respective countries for which they've spoken, and cultivate that community of practice that I think you were making reference to, Surya or Dante, and work on that, work in between, as Dante was saying. It's absolutely crucial, and how articulated the rapporteur were is also reflect how articulated the country sessions were. I found them perhaps the most interesting part of this forum, and kudos to you, Surya, for having had the idea of having the very country session themselves. Now, going on the points and trends that stood out in my view, based also on having been part of some of these discussions. Obviously, I'm very happy about hearing NAPs everywhere. We have invested so much on it, so I'm glad to see that it's in every country roadmap. And of course, it's easy to say that as far as UNDP is concerned, we'll keep supporting these processes. But in the interest of time, let me pick on two more points that I found stood out as a common trend. One already mentioned, one not mentioned before. The first is awareness raising, or creating sentiments, as somebody said in a session, or even more, the word that I heard over and over in this forum is campaigning. I really would like Dante to take note of that word, because I see an evolution before awareness raising to campaigning. And obviously the difference is the activism aspect of it. I really see a call for activism. I really see a call for the business and human rights discourse to learn the lessons of the social movements on environment, on LGBTIQ, and I really hope that becomes part of the roadmap for the next decade. Dante, indeed, it will reflect the sentiments of the South Asia Forum, because again, campaign came up over and over. A second point that I've heard mentioning today and in many other sessions is about involvement of youth, the young people. I've heard this in many sessions, even the substantive ones. I mean, after all, we're looking at the future, and how can we discuss about roadmaps for the future without young people? So involvement of young people, and it may be a cliche, but of course, youth and campaigning are strongly linked as points. When it comes to youth, I hope I wasn't the only one that noticed how many young people not only participated, but actually engaged proactively in discussions during the South Asia Forum. I found that very, very refreshing, and certainly would motivate us to give even more space to young people in forums ahead of us. I'll perhaps, just stop by saying that these roadmaps are important because they feed into the next decade, larger and broader roadmap, and I'm sure will confirm many of the trends that you're already registering around the world, Dante, but they are important also as a baseline for where we are at this stage in these countries. And I hope we can start with those roadmaps. Next year, if we will have a South Asia Forum on business and human rights, I will let Surya announce that. I do hope that will be the case. We certainly want that. So that will be the starting point to review progress in the 12 months. I do have comments more specific on the NHRIs in Bangladesh, on the EU, but I'll wait for Surya to come back, hopefully, to us, and then I'll be able to give some concrete recommendations on some of the concerns raised specifically by the country sessions. Thank you
very much. Thank you very much, Livio. So Geeta, we'll go back to you now. Hopefully the technology will support us this time. You have the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya. So I hope that you can hear me now.
Excellent.
Okay, great. After all of these months of, teleworking and Zooming and all of this, it's still sometimes a challenge. So my apologies for that. I mean, first of all, I would like to say that I'm really honored and pleased to speak in this closing session of the second South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. As ILO, we were very pleased to be part of the organizing team for this second South Asia Forum. And I really would like to thank UNDP, the working group, Office of the High Commissioner, for the very good collaboration that we had in the organization of this forum. And I also would like to thank the rapporteurs on coming up with such concrete ideas of moving forward on the business and human rights agenda in your country. It clearly highlights how we need to take into account also the national context of each of the countries when we are dealing with the business and human rights agenda. Of course, there are a number of elements that I would like to highlight after already, Dante is always very complete already in highlighting a number of elements, but I do want to highlight a few. First of all is how the different roadmaps also make the link of the agenda of business and human rights on the SDGs. And secondly, on the building back better in the response to the COVID-19 crisis. Indeed, this is a huge opportunity not to return to business as it used to be, but really think about the importance of protecting and respecting human rights in business operations. And I think this is a unique opportunity as well that we should look at in how to engage in a different way with governments, with employers, to make sure that we make progress on respecting and protecting human rights in business operations. Of course, that will need legislative reforms, looking at the labor laws, working with enterprises on changing their behavior. And in that regard, I would like to underline the link again of the importance of international labor standards in the broader business and human rights agenda. I mean, we had many, many different sessions in the South Asia Forum that was really dealing with labor rights in the broader context of the business and human rights agenda. And this is a critical area. Again, it was put forward by many of you in the presentation of the roadmap. I also would like to highlight the importance of social dialogue, and we can use many different words for it: inclusive, participatory approach, but it's basically bringing together governments, employers, workers, other stakeholders in the discussions on very specific issues where progress needs to be made, and agreeing on the steps that are needed to bring about systemic change, because many of these issues, it's about systemic issues in the current situation in the country. So this also includes taking a very participatory, coherent, and inclusive approach in the development and implementation of the NAPs. And I think there, in the relation to the NAPs, what is very important is it's not just, developing a NAP, but how does it make linkages to other commitments that the government, for example, already has taken in the context of ratification of ILO standards? And then how does the NAP contribute to the implementation of these commitments that have been taken by the country? In this context, I also would like to highlight in the context of the access to remedy. Of course, we talk a lot about state-based, and I mean, labor courts were mentioned, but also the importance of the non-state-based mechanisms. And in that context, highlight the importance of industrial relations as a very important mechanism of prevention of human rights violation in business operations, collective bargaining agreements, and broader framework agreements that we see emerging as part of multinational enterprises, global union federations, but that of course also have an impact at the country level. So moving forward, and I'm finishing here, I really would like to invite all of the actors to look again at international labor standards, be it the fundamental principles and rights at work, the M&E declaration, but also looking at the commitments that the governments have made by ratifying these ILO conventions and ensure that they applied in law and practice in the country. And we know a lot of progress needs to be made. The ILO stands ready to support all of our member states in moving forward in this process on decent work as part of the bigger business and human rights agenda. And we do this, through our offices in each of the countries that have been reporting back to us as part of this forum, but of course, also in close collaboration with the other international organizations that are part of the organization of this forum. And we look forward to further engaging with all of you at the country level and further engaging with the other international organizations with which we co-organized this forum. It's a huge opportunity, and it's an important moment now to grasp it and make progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geeta. And thank you also for highlighting some additional points rather than repeating what other panelists mentioned. So that is very much appreciated. So we still have 5-6 minutes, so not too bad. I think we did very well. So thank you for all the panelists for your excellent cooperation in managing time. So self-regulation can work, it seems, if they just stick. Because I gave them the warning in advance. So thank you very much. Jokes apart, we still have 5 minutes. So what I would suggest is that Livio, Geeta, and Dante, think about it. I'll give you the time to think. But if you have to say one thing that we should do between now and the next forum in South Asia, right? I think as Dante rightly pointed out, it's not forum to forum that we forget anything about BHR for that 1 year. No. We need to work day in, day out because the challenges are significant, right? So think, three of you, what is one thing that you would like South Asia to do or focus on as a sub-region of Asia going forward, right? Next 1 year, and then we can make an assessment after 1 year, because as Livio hinted, we would really like to continue this annual regional forum. Details will be made available later on, but definitely it is likely to be early 2022. And let us hope that we can do at least face-to-face or at least a hybrid format, if not completely face-to-face, because hybrid model is likely to work in future now, even if the pandemic is over. I want to briefly also reflect past. I don't know, Livio, if you remember, when I mentioned this idea of South Asia Forum in towards the end of 2018, both of us were not sure what we are cooking up here, right? But I don't know how, Livio, you feel. I think that was the right decision that we made, that we should trigger something in South Asia. That created some momentum. Last year, we could not really do it because of the pandemic, but I'm glad that all of us worked together and we could do it virtually. And we extended the partnership. I think that is very important in my view. We got ILO on board as well. more islands we connect. That's how I believe. And some of you were not part of the opening. I proposed 3 things, and I quickly repeat and then come to my panelist. CAN. Yes, we can. So I put 3 words, CAN, and C was cohesive action on the part of states and companies. A for me was access to remedy, and N was networks for change. And I think many of the things that you are articulating perhaps fit into this typology of CAN, but of course, that is not exhaustively. Now, let me go back to the panelists. And of course, I haven't yet received any questions from the participants. So if you have any questions, quick questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we will get back to you to collect feedback. But let us start with the one thing each. Geeta, may I start with you in the reverse order this time?
Yes, thank you, Surya. I really like the CAN, you know, what you talk about, the cohesive action, access to remedy, network for change. I think it's very powerful. So I could translate that maybe in, you know, ILO language of, you know, social dialogue, industrial relations, and really looking at the decent work priorities that are there in each of the countries in the South Asia in the South Asia region, and to see how these priorities can be included in processes that are taking place on national action plans, so that these are really embedded also in ongoing activities that are being undertaken, maybe not under the umbrella of business and human rights, but it's being developed under the umbrella of decent work, but it's dealing with the same issues. So, you know, for bigger coherence at the national level, looking at what is happening there, get a coordinated approach involving actively the ministries of labor, the employers, the trade unions in these processes. And then hopefully for the next forum, we have a number of concrete priorities that have been identified by each of the countries. And as I think we need to make sure it's about setting priorities. It's not about covering everything, because that would be overambitious. It's really about putting in place priorities where progress is most needed and can be achieved in the next years. And as I said, as ILO, we are very much willing to work with all of our constituents in getting them, supporting them in the process of national action plans, if the countries decide indeed to move in the process of developing these national action plans and contribute to this coherence at the national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. Dante, what is one message that you would like to reinforce? Thank you.
Yeah, what I think is possible and doable, and it will be my, let's say, my dream, is for you as a community of the willing to widen the tent by building bridges with the ones that are not here now, the ones that are not aware, the ones that are not in this agenda, including those that have been already mentioned on the SDG, on climate change, etc. So that will be my overarching, let's say, dream, wider the tent, in bringing in the ones that are missing, and being welcoming to those, not by finger pointing them, but actually creating the conditions for a welcoming ceremony where everyone can feel part of this agenda in this tide that is starting to move in the right direction. And the footnote to that, as Geeta just said, the NAPS processes at the national level are an incredible opportunity to make that coherence happen, to feel that every stakeholder and all parties are welcome, and stress the need to build an agenda that is cohesive. And by doing that, it will be realistically ambitious. So those will be my final reflections, Surya. Thanks again.
Thank you. So we have the request to make the tent bigger, identify priorities. Livio, what is your message?
Well, sometimes people really think alike. So I'm not short of ideas, but I had to repeat one just because I really think is an important one. I had written down, I promise you, Dante, I'm not copying you, enlarging the tent. Surya, I remember when you came up with that idea, we were thinking, what can we really achieve in South Asia? The first forum, I remember that we took this picture of each delegations and we were proud of it. We have 4 or 5 people, literally, when we were in Delhi for each delegation, apart from India. In the country session this year, we had around 45 to 50 people in each of those. So we increased it tenfold, right? And so I think really we have a much broader community of practice, but obviously it's still very small given the size of these countries. So my ambition is to, let's put it in terms of targets, as we say in projects, you know, let us try to multiply tenfold once again. Can we try to bring 450 people per country next year? That would really be what I would be aiming at. And that would naturally help pursuing most of all the other things and recommendations that are in the roadmap. So let us set that as a target for us.
Wonderful. I think that's a very good tangible target. So let us make more change makers who could make the change, and we have the standards already in place to provide the guidance on that, right? There was a question or perhaps a suggestion for us that environmental related BHR issues not discussed enough. I think it was discussed, but we take note of this. And perhaps there were parallel sessions and people missed out. So we will welcome those feedback comments. We'll send a survey for collecting feedback from all the participants. So thank you once again, all the panelists, repeaters, all the participants. I know this looks easy, but sometimes there could be a digital fatigue, you know. So I would like to thank all the teams, members in Geneva, in Bangkok, in Kathmandu, I'm in Hong Kong, and of course, in different parts of the world, Geneva, and the team in Delhi, ILO team in different country offices, everyone. Without your support, we could not have done it. So I really appreciate, and Dante, you're waking up so early to join everyone. I can't name everyone. With this, I would like to conclude it, but I think Harpreet, you want to announce because the South Asia Forum will take place, of course, early next year. But the fun is there that we have something more in between, right? So as you can see here, the UN Asia Pacific Responsible Business and Human Rights Forum will take place from 1st to 4th of June. So all of you are most welcome to engage with us in that. And I think that covers Asia Pacific. So South Asia, the Pacific, East Asia, and Middle East, everything is kind of included in this overarching theme. So with this, bye for now.
Can we give a big round of virtual applause to Kevin and Harpreet and Maria and Kelvin and
yes, why not? Yeah, let's do that.
Big thanks to Harpreet.
Probably they can turn on their videos if they can. Kevin and Kelvin. I see Kelvin already. Thank you, Kelvin. Kevin, can we see you? Maria, I don't know if you can see. Oh, Kevin is here, yeah. And Maria, okay, thank you everyone. All the team, back team, wonderful once again. We could not have done it without you, each one of you. So, bye everyone, take care, stay safe, and continue to work with a positive mindset, and see you somewhere soon. Bye for now.
Thank you, Surya. Thank you all.
And I think I must thank also the logistics teams, right? Insight Pact, the Q, I'm forgetting the name, Q something, right? Nepal, who can remind me that name? Q Design, I think, right? Yeah. So everyone who supported us, because without your support, we could not have done anything. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Surya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. This now concludes the 2021 UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. I would like to ask all of the panelists to turn their videos on one more time for one last photo.
Oh, many have left already. You still want the photo? Okay.
Do a quick photo with who we have. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.